All right, fellas, we're going to read something that kind of went over my head when I was out of the States. I didn't see this story, or if I saw it, I forgot about it. U.S. government to bring Patriot Act to digital assets. This is written by Lola Leets from The Rage. And this is kind of relevant to what we've been talking about recently in regards to privacy by default, transparency by choice, and how there are some private cryptos out there who are transparent by default, and then you have to opt into the privacy. And this is going to kind of show you why there's a fungibility problem in a practical sense when you're talking about coins that don't give you default privacy and you have to opt into the transparency. So let's get into this a little bit. I'm going to skip some of this and just kind of get to it. Since 2001, the Patriot Act has significantly shaped the financial world, mandating the strict application of KYC frameworks. KYC is Know Your Customer, tightening anti money laundering laws, and increasing the share of sensitive information between both private and public entities. Now, FineSend director Andrea Gacki confirmed that the Treasury is working on finalizing the so-called Mixer rule, which uses the Patriot Act to prohibit private transactions in crypto. Yeah, so the Patriot Act is just the gift that keeps on giving, right? At the same time, Representative Noon from Iowa let slip the House appears to continue work on the Special Measures to Fight Modern Threats Act, a Patriot Act digital asset legislation that's long been thought dead, which would solidify the Treasury's use of Section 311 to prohibit specific transactions. That sounds pretty intense. So they're working on something called a mixer rule, okay? Now, I don't know where this is. This is from September. Um, Rather recent. I mean, we're talking about a month old. I haven't seen any new updates on this recently, but you know how slow Congress can work, uh, when it comes to certain things. But uh, they said FineSend is working with blockchain analysis companies to de-anonymize pseudonymous transactions. Licardo countered that software like mixers would allow users to evade even sophisticated detection techniques. Um, they're exploring the next steps of the Biden era mixer rule, uh, and they're looking to do this. Okay, so this is kind of the lowdown as to what they want to crack down on, and this is pretty extensive. It's kind of insane. So the Treasury's mixer rule is not so much a mixer rule rather than a blanket ban on any software and even behavior that would grant users of public blockchains transactional privacy. Now, when we talk about public blockchains, we're talking about blockchains that are transparent by default. I'm not sure if this is in the same context or not. Public blockchains, maybe they're talking about blockchains that are available to the public, and don't belong to a corporation. As such, the rule would deem the following software and behavior as a primary money laundering concern, meaning that such transactions would end up blocked by centralized intermediaries and could put an end to the development of privacy software, even for non custodial wallets, under threat of criminal liability. So here's the problem: if you're Zcash, you're cooked, okay? Because you have a corporation kind of doing the developments on this stuff. And if they have this kind of going on where you're going to be basically scrutinized and cracked down upon for developing these things, everyone's going to go dark. Everyone's going to go off grid to develop these things. And those kinds of people exist on Monero. Not all of them, a good number of them, especially good ones, are doxxed. But if you're a corporation, like a regulated legal entity, you're going to be in trouble with something like that coming down. I mean, unless you just escape to the Virgin Islands or something, is that what you're going to do? Uh, but this is what they want to do. These kinds of things are going to be considered a primary money laundering concern. You're going to be flagged. Pooling or aggregating cryptocurrency from multiple persons' wallets, addresses, or accounts. Okay. Now, I keep hearing about shielded pools when it comes to Zcash. That would probably fall under that directive. And we'll get to that here in a sec. Using programmatic or algorithmic code to coordinate, manage, or manipulate the structure of a transaction. So you're talking about coin joining and you're talking about mixers, right? To just mix the stuff around and send it back to your wallet so that you have different UTXOs and so forth that are delinked. Splitting cryptocurrency for transmittal and transmitting the cryptocurrency through a series of independent transactions. Creating and using single use wallets. That's an interesting one. If you use a single use wallet, I mean, in Monero, we do that all the time simply because of the 20-minute wait, where things are locked up. And it's custom when you go to a place to spend your Monero that you have a lot of different wallets simply for the purpose of being able to spend more rapidly and not having to wait, for the unlock. Addresses or accounts and sending cryptocurrency through such wallets, addresses, or accounts through a series of independent transactions. I mean, this is crazy. Exchanging between types of crypto or other digital assets. So that's even more wild. I bet the Bitcoin bros freaking love that. So you're just going to be able to buy Bitcoin. If you go into another crypto, it's going to be considered a primary money laundering concern? Really? I mean, that's kind of wild. Facilitating user initiated delays in transactional activity. Okay. So moving on, notable. Well, let's comment on this real quick. This whole pooling and aggregating from multiple persons' wallets, address, or accounts. Now, traditionally, they're talking about mixers where everyone just kind of throws their stuff into kind of a washing machine where it all gets jumbled around and then it spits back at you some random UTXOs and presumably they're delinked from any kind of history that happened before that. Um, now, that's almost better than using a shielded address in Zcash or a shielded pool because on Zcash it's like 100% certain and blatant that you're sending your crypto to a shielded address because you have transparent addresses and then you have shielded addresses. And if you don't send it to a transparent address, you're sending it to a shielded address. It's pretty freaking binary. And so if they send you or if they look at the chain, you're sending your crypto to a shielded wallet, you're going to get flagged. Whereas, there are algorithmic ways to see if people are using a mixer. They've had those for years now, and that's a problem. But are they going to be able to more readily pick up the fact that maybe you're doing, some splitting here, and you're sending some Bitcoin over here, and you're kind of churning things within your own wallets? Maybe sending some stuff here one day, sending some stuff there another day. Um, that's less deterministic than you sending it to a legit shielded wallet. Now, you do run into tax problems with that whole thing, right? Because if you're just here's really one challenge with this whole tax thing because exchanges are now uh, going to be trying to facilitate tax compliance, particularly here in the United States, and with the article we're going to get to next, that's happening as well in South Korea. It's going to be happening everywhere. But, in the US, it's very custom for these exchanges not only to see where you're sending the crypto from before it gets onto the exchange, but they're looking at where you send it afterwards. There are plenty of stories that we've gone through here on the channel where people send crypto off the exchanges, and based on the activity that happens after they send the crypto off the exchanges, their account gets shut down. That's really bizarre, but that's what happens. And they're tracing where all this stuff is going all the time. And at some point, they're going to have AI running the show if they don't already. And when you have this kind of activity happening, where you send a Bitcoin transaction to yourself and then you're trying to privatize it a little bit, delink the history, and you send your crypto here, there, and everywhere, either one of two things are going to happen. Either they're going to think that you're making taxable sales by sending that crypto to somebody else. Now, maybe you could say it's a gift or something if you get under scrutiny. I'm not advocating anyone lie or anything, but there's that. And then also, um, it's like either you're doing that or you're mixing your coins, and that's exactly against the intention of this rule. Okay, so you're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't if you're going to be using these public blockchains. You're not going to have privacy. And if you're using optional privacy features, they're going to see you using the privacy feature. And then you're going to be caught up in this rule. And increasingly, the only way it seems to get your crypto, because check this out, this whole exchanging between different types of cryptocurrency. Let's say you get your crypto from the exchanges and they're transparent cryptocurrencies because that's all that's left on the exchanges. And then you go to send that to like Cyridex or something where you can flip your Ethereum for Monero. Um, they're going to ask about that, because when you go to transact whatever back onto the exchange, they're going to ask for your cost basis information. That's something that's starting to happen in 2026. And what are you going to say? Oh, well, I didn't sell anything. Well, they just saw you do these transactions, right? And so the grid is kind of coming in. The walls are closing in. And the tax system, the AI, these kinds of rules. Now, this hasn't been passed yet, but this kind of thing is probably coming. And I've said for a while that probably what's going to be coming as well are FBAR disclosures. They're going to treat holding crypto in a self-hosted wallet as if you have a foreign bank account. That kind of thing could very well happen. And, we've talked about wealth taxes and unrealized capital gains taxes and other forms of confiscation on this channel. I mean, they're going to try to get all this stuff on the grid. Okay. And if you're using transparent by default blockchains, this just isn't going to fly. And, they all want to talk about how great the privacy tech is once you get into it. But if they make the greatest privacy tech in the world, but you're shown to be getting into it, um, then you're kind of in a bad situation. It doesn't matter how good the privacy is because they're going to see you using the privacy thing, which is the argument we've had here forever. Now, other people are going to say, well, if you get Monero from a centralized exchange, isn't that the same thing? Well, first off, it's not even on any centralized exchanges anymore. I mean, it is in some circumstances, like Qcoin, I think, still has it. Kraken in some countries has it. But increasingly, it's just being knocked off and kicked off. Um, it's a little bit different, though, from Monero because you're just straight up buying the Monero. And once you take it off, it's in the wild. They can't trace it from there anymore. And you could get your Monero from some crazy person who's doing some crazy stuff, and you don't have to worry about what they're doing because once it comes to you, it's totally fresh, totally clean, totally delinked. You send it back onto the exchange and do whatever you have to do. And it's not illegal yet, but once this stuff starts to happen, they may just start knocking Monero off. In which case, you're going to have to figure out how to earn it, and you're going to have to figure out how to get it. But the cool thing about getting it and earning it, however you do that, is you may not be subject to these, as crazy as that sounds, because you're not using an additional tool in order to get privacy. You're just using the tool itself, which has the privacy baked in. And there's going to be, I bet, at some point, some legal battles regarding this kind of concept where it's like, okay, I'm not trying to do anything if I'm just using Monero. I just have maybe some aesthetic preference for it or whatever. And maybe they just end up banning it because of this whole legal challenge that could come at some point. But, it's like, I'm not trying to get privacy on top of the coin. I'm just trying to use the coin which already has privacy baked in. Um, just some ideas as to what's maybe coming down the pike. But still, with apps like Haveno and with the ability and with Monero being dominant on DNMs, you're able to still interact with it. You're still able to use it no matter what really happens in this realm. And that's up for people to decide whatever they want to do should this kind of thing comes down the pike. But if you're using transparent by default cryptos and you got to opt into privacy, this whole thing's going to be a problem. That's essentially what I'm trying to say. Um, okay. Notably, the mixer rule suggestions on cryptocurrency swaps, transaction delays, quote unquote splitting, and the creation of single use addresses, wallets, and accounts would even put users under suspicion, with the authorities potentially ending in criminal liability. Similar to how transaction structuring, sometimes known as smurfing, is deemed a federal crime in traditional finance, referring to the intentional breakup of transactions to fall below the $10,000 currency transaction reporting requirement. Yeah, where you have to file like an 8300 form, I believe it is. Um, Bank Secrecy Act laws, that could be coming. In traditional finance, smurfing carries a federal prison sentence of up to 5 years. So they send you to. Isn't that crazy? This is how serious they are about this kind of stuff. And I imagine, again, what's going to be happening is you're going to get a lot of favorable regulation towards these stable coins, which are basically CBDCs, and these types of regs for everything else to basically make it so hard and risky to use these kinds of coins, these kinds of cryptos, that nobody's going to want to use them. Um, or just the very hardcore people, and the hardcore people are all using Monero. I mean, it's really going to bifurcate to that point. I mean, they're really going to make it that kind of uh, mutually exclusive world where it's like you have the in the regulation cryptos over here and outside the regulation cryptos over here. There's a probability of that, but I'd like to believe that, you know, we could have some middle ground here with FCMP and the ability to opt into transparency and all that stuff. I know there are some crowds that don't like to hear that, some crowds that do, but the reality is with FCMP, you're able to kind of opt into things and have auditability, which is one of the cool features of it. And if you don't do the opt-in, you have great privacy otherwise. But we'll see where this goes. I'm sure there's going to be a political bent on this at some point. I still have concerns where after Trump gets out in 2028, or 2029 technically, then with everything that's happened so far and with the direction the country is going financially, we could see a Democratic administration. And if we're in a financial tight spot and we start to go into an austerity type situation, they're not going to want people to have privacy in crypto. That's just kind of a reality, and they're going to crack down on this stuff. That's just my prediction because they're going to really raise the taxes. They're really going to shut things down that much more. And what's really kind of something to think about is in 3 years, Trump will have and his people will have built a very tight knit control grid. They're building it right now with the whole Palantir thing. Digital ID is sneaking its way in here and there. Um, Stable coins, all that kind of stuff is being built right now by this administration. We're having a lot of this stuff come also as a result of illegal immigration, a lot of ID laws as a response to that, ostensibly anyway. And so, should some socialist tyrant get power, it's really going to be kind of wild, when it gets to this point. And we'll have to see what happens. All this stuff, I kind of want to get to the next article. This is something I just found. This is relatively recent. October 10th, 2025, so just 4 days ago. South Korea targets offline crypto in new tax crackdown. The agency already confiscated all this money and digital assets, blah, blah, blah. The country is tightening AML regulations and implementing stricter verification rules for transactions as it wants to balance regulation with its goal of becoming Central Asia's leading crypto hub. Yeah. So, again, the whole tax thing is going to play into this. It's going to justify surveillance. Um, and yeah, they're like, according to a report, there's evidence that people are using crypto offline and concealing, their taxes and stuff. It's like, well, yeah, I mean, probably. The agency is prepared to conduct home searches and seize hard drives and cold wallet devices. Now, there was a part of this I wanted to talk about in particular. Um, South Korea is pretty austere. I think they actually banned Monero from all the exchanges over there already. Um, Security conscious investors. Um, yeah, here we go. This growth coincided and let's talk about the growth of crypto in the country. This growth coincided with a sharp rise in suspicious transactions reports filed by virtual asset service providers. Now, again, the exchanges, the VASPs, they're watching what people do, not only with the crypto that gets onto the exchange, but also the crypto that comes off. And if you start throwing your stuff into privacy tools that you have to opt into, that'll be a challenge. Now, another challenge is, you go to get Monero, let's say you exchange your Monero for another crypto. That itself is not going to be able to be seen on chain like you getting the Monero. They're not going to see that because that's a separate thing. It's just you're giving your Bitcoin to another address. But who knows what they're going to be doing with that Bitcoin, you see? And if they're watching that transaction take place, then they're going to think that you have a taxable transaction or you sent that crypto to yourself. And maybe that person who you sent the crypto to then uses a mixer and then they think you used a mixer. And then, boom, you have a suspicious activity report filed on you or a suspicious transaction report filed on you. So again, you have the fungibility problem playing into this again. And it's really a shame again that like people don't get this and people don't recognize the value of being private by default. But you see how this is kind of sandwiching people into a rock and a hard place. Um, so Kazakhstan, I guess, is also tightening their AML regulations. They're shutting down crypto exchanges. Let's see. I think that's basically all with this. That's the main thing I wanted to note. This is kind of happening in more places. And really, Monero is going to become more popular in this regard because people are going to understand the private by default necessity for crypto to work. And if you're trying to, like, you might as well just, if you're not in this game here, you might as well just get into Bitcoin and keep it on an exchange or whatever, just because this is going to get hot, right? And if you're not ready for that kind of heat, then maybe it's just like Monero isn't for you, but otherwise, that's what is going to be desired by people when this kind of thing starts to happen. It really is going to break into two camps, like the hyper regulated, AI surveilled, and monitored blockchain environment, and then the dark. It's really going to be those two kinds of worlds. And if you're kind of diddle daddling in the middle here by being transparent by default, and then you've got to like opt into privacy features, like that's just not going to work. Okay. The fungibility problem is going to be a problem for you. You might as well just go full transparent at that point. And, this whole you're going to get the best of both worlds thing, you're probably going to get neither, I think, with this world that's coming. So those are just my thoughts on that. Let me know what your thoughts are. And you know, it's an interesting world coming up. Everyone's going to have to make their own choice as to what to do. Thank goodness Monero is legal at the moment. Um, there's nothing wrong with using Monero. There's nothing wrong with using these privacy tools. We still have that freedom at this point. But once it gets to that point, people are going to have to make decisions, and I think a lot of people are going to choose Monero because that's the battle-tested one, and that's the one that has really shown its commitment to default privacy. So, Mateo, if you want to leave a private super chat, you are more than welcome to do that on xmartchat.com and AeroCPA. Like, comment, subscribe, all that kinds of stuff. See you in the next one. God bless.